morning, and Happy New Year to you all. Welcome to Leaders and Legends. Special welcome to our board members, our students, faculty, alumni, and prospective students. I believe we have 8 potential candidates for our full-time global MBA program, so a special welcome to them. And many of them indeed have traveled long distances to come here to listen to the speaker today, so my special thanks to those who have come from far distances. This morning, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Mark Fetting. While we all know him as a successful leader of Legg, Mark has a long record of accomplishment that led him to his important role, including positions at Citibank, T. Rowe Price, Greenwich Associates, and Prudential, where he distinguished himself by transforming the company's money management business. This man really knows about investment management business. Mark's remarkable aptitude continued to get him noticed, and he moved to Baltimore in 2000. At Legg, he led the firm's efforts in strategic development and acquisition and was named CEO in January 2008. Just in time for the downturn in the market and the economic turmoil of the last year. These times have been rather tough, but Legg has prevailed. 2009 proved to be a strong year for the Legg Capital Management Opportunity Fund, recording an 88% gain for the year. I wish I had invested. A Baltimore institution, founded in 1899, Legg has grown to be one of the top 10 or the largest 10 institutional asset managers in the world, with the clients spread across 190 countries on 6 continents. And here we are today in Legg Mason Tower, the tallest building in Maryland and the tallest between Charlotte and Philadelphia. LEED certified, the building has added a new dimension to the Baltimore skyline, and I'm proud that this will soon, now this is party propaganda, this will soon be the permanent home for Carey Business School. So you can see why we attract students. Out there, the water, beautiful place. Mark has been a strong supporter of the Carey Business School from its beginning, with degrees from both. I said, no, can't say loudly, see? He's got a degree from Wharton and Harvard, and his distinguished career, so we'll forgive him for that. And his distinguished career, it was natural that he should become one of the founding members of the Board of Overseers of the Carey Business School. And I'm deeply grateful to him for his service to the school, his vice counsel, and guidance to me personally. And now for taking time to share his thoughts and for this audience. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mark Fetting.
Well, thank you all. It's really wonderful to start 010 with such a great audience and with such and many familiar faces. I will say to the faculty and students of the Carey Business School, their deans, we need to do a little fact check on the dean. I'm not sure we have the tallest building here, but I'm sure all of you were aware that he was just joshing. But I'm sure intellectual rigor will prevail, and we'll keep the dean on the less boastful front. But it's great to be here, and it's great, and soon in August, we'll be welcoming the Carey Business School to the building. And I don't know if Michael Beatty is here, but really Michael deserves quite a lot of credit in making this building a reality. We're proud to be a tenant, and we're proud to have a number of great tenants here. And Harbor East has been terrific, so welcome to you all. The topic today is global leadership from Baltimore. And before I get into my thoughts formally, I do think we have one very important global imperative that we all can rise to this morning. The Ravens must beat the Indianapolis Colts. Must beat them, right? And we need to will this. I believe we kind of revoked the curse of New England last week, and this week we break the curse of the Indianapolis Colts because we know they are always the Baltimore Colts to us. So thank you. I'd like to really talk about this topic of global leadership from Baltimore and think about it in response to three questions. What does it mean to be global? How do we define leadership? And can leadership or global leadership come from areas like a Baltimore, that is, from outside of the world capitals? I think the answers to this are simple, but not necessarily easy. So let's talk about global. The accepted definition of global, starting with that wonderful institution, the OED, or the Oxford English Dictionary, is worldwide, or of the whole world, coming from the Latin root globus, meaning spherical, without ends, continuous. Now, in the internet age, global is more comprehensive than worldwide, faster than immediate, and broader than encyclopedic. It encompasses the spheres of thought, communication, commerce, and life. It is without boundaries, geographical, cultural, ideological, and intellectual. It means everywhere, often all at once. However, global is not a new concept born in the age of technology. It, in fact, traces its roots to ancient Greece. When asked where he came from, Diogenes replied, "I am a citizen of the world." And the Stoics further developed this simple philosophy by saying that each human dwells in two communities, the community of our birth and the community of human argument and aspiration. I love that, human argument and aspiration. Within our own political borders, the concept of embracing a global world was espoused by President Truman to Congress at the conclusion of World War II. He said, "In this shrinking world, it is futile to seek safety behind geographical barriers." And he said it in 1945. In the early 1960s, well before Twitter, Marshall McLuhan wrote about the global village, in which the world would be experienced simultaneously by everyone, so shrinking the world to one community. Global transcends political, social, and economic barriers. My day-to-day life, as is shared by many of the business leaders here and really institutional leaders here, is even more global and is a marked contrast to even my immediate predecessor. My recent experiences visiting our business concerns over the last quarter, ending calendar year 2009, in Europe, Asia, and South America are very different than the very same visits we would have done in 80, 90, or even 2000. My staff reached me immediately with market information, business updates, insights, developments, opinions, deadlines, literally instantaneously via BlackBerry, not only from our office in Baltimore, but from many of our 22 offices throughout the world. 50 years ago, if I'd been in Sao Paulo, the only thing I would have been concerned about would have been to be up to date on what was going on in our Brazilian business. I trust that all was well in our offices in Melbourne, Warsaw, and Singapore, but I wouldn't have real-time data indicating so. And my experience is not unique. Manufacturers like Toyota, IBM, and Dell have a global supply chain. Retailers like Amazon and Walmart have global demand chains. Each has a global infrastructure. All businesses are as global as the markets they are serving, and they need to respond to their customers on a 24/7 cycle. And living and thinking globally and without boundaries isn't limited to business. At Hopkins, a clinical trial on proteins linking Alzheimer's to chronic heart failure is done real-time in coordination with like trials in Canada and Italy, The doctors in Baltimore can instantly factor in results from those from the University of Bologna's National Institute for Cardiovascular Research to be included in a presentation made in Orlando, Florida, and from there subsequently disseminated around the world, thereby creating an active feedback loop that increases the speed of innovation, such that Hopkins, with 17 global research centers, ranging from topics ranging from constructive capitalism to global energy and environmental initiatives, applied physics lab, engineering, urban education. I mean, these are global initiatives that span from Hopkins across the world. If you take a look at research that they're actually doing with an initiative that operates in more than 30 countries to improve the health of women and families throughout the world by delivering high-tech medical innovations for accessible, low-cost health care, particularly in the field of maternal health and infant mortality. One small example, over 500,000 women in Thailand work is being done relative to cervical cancer using nothing more simple than a vinegar admixture to replace the conventional expensive laboratory pap smear, thereby diagnosing and perhaps saving hundreds of thousands of lives. So clearly, to be global is profound, and we in Baltimore across a number of institutions are embracing it. So how is global leadership? How is leadership defined? I mean, here again, leadership is no longer defined by corporate title, I can vouch for that, by political power, or by military rank. Today, true leadership is about ideas combined with action, in other words, innovation. In a global world, ideas, both good and bad, have traveled instantaneously. Think of hybrid automobile engines, but also AAA-rated subprime mortgage. Let's not think about that. Think about green energy, but also, as awful as it is, suicide bombing in terms of an idea that has just been awful. Leadership is limited not only by the promise of thinking and the power of action, but how big is that idea? How can we make sure that that what we want to do has never been done, that it's right or wrong? Today we have examples. The work at MedImmune in terms of proprietary reverse genetics, or Under Armour's legendary, revolutionary T-shirts, all in our area. And then you think about kind of icons of leadership and the shift from the Jack Welch to the Larry Page and Sergey Brin at Google. And a kind of great quote from GM, where then CEO Rick Wagner statement to shareholders in November of '06, "We have absolute clarity about the road ahead. I have no doubt that we will succeed." To Larry Page's philosophy, "We don't just want you to have a great job. We want you to have a great life. We provide you with everything you need to be productive and happy on and off the clock." So compare that, and today, or I guess yesterday in terms of close, GM preferred, because the equity's not trading anymore, or the common's not trading anymore, closed at $2.67. Google closed yesterday at $590.11. So then let's think about, if that's what kind of leadership, and a sense of new leadership around ideas, more than position, more than title, more than location of firm, let's think about global leadership from a place like Baltimore or from anywhere outside of the world capitals. Because I would believe that leadership cannot be limited to the so-called global centers like New York, London, and Tokyo, because ideas don't have zip codes or country codes. Global leadership can also come from a Baltimore, a Pasadena, a Melbourne, a Sao Paulo. In fact, the traditional bastions of leadership may be a bit tarred or tired or even jaded these days, often blamed for today's woes rather than being incubators of solutions. Would we trust policy on financial reform that comes from Wall Street, or is there more credibility today if it comes from the Economic Opportunity Institute in Seattle? Would we be more open to a political perspective from the National People's Congress in China, or from the Independent International Peace Research Institute in Oslo? Do we look to Tokyo for new ideas, or do we turn to the Silicon Valleys and incubators of mid-sized cities such as Ann Arbor, Raleigh-Durham, or the biotech and medical centers in Baltimore and Boston? Do we even expect great television from the largest, most entrenched networks, or do we look for it from the HBO's and Sundance Channel? Do we look for the best movies in Hollywood, or from independent filmmakers like our very own John Waters? Honest answer is probably a bit of both. The big cities and the best cities are where it's at, and there lies our opportunity. A study conducted by the Bogle Center, and this, of course, is the famous Jack Bogle, who, for those of us who know him well, you got to love all aspects. But anyway, the Bogle Center for Financial Research found that successful alpha-generating investment managers are predominantly headquartered outside of New York. So Baltimore, home to the first ever investment bank in Alex Brown, and we have many leaders here from Brown Advisory, a respected cousin of that wonderful institution. We've done that. If you take a look at what we've got, traditional investment management, T. Rowe Price, Brown Capital, as well as Brown Advisory. Eddie Brown had a great review in Barron's this past weekend. And of course, Legg Mason. Venture investors like NEA, and private equity firms like Carlyle, whose founders included 2 alumni from T. Rowe Price and Marriott, and whose leader is a proud graduate of Johns Hopkins University. So more than ever, we should be looking outside the iconic centers of yesterday for new ideas and new solutions, and there lies our opportunity. So ideas in action can begin from any locale and transform the world. Baltimore has a rich tradition of innovation from the simplest to the most sublime. Many of you have your own listing here, I'm sure, but the first bottle cap, the first electric refrigerator, the first cordless drill, and many, many medical breakthroughs. During times when marketing new ideas was a cumbersome process, Baltimore was a leader in developing ideas and products. Think of those iconic commercials, Noxzema. What was it, Colt 45. Remember the Colt 45, man? How many can remember that? Right, yeah? And then head skis and tennis rackets. I mean, not only were we innovating in the product, we were innovating in the communication of the story of that product. So, and that continues. We have, Eros has assembled the largest and broadest TB vaccine product pipeline in the world. Excuse me, Development Design Group, a local architectural and design firm, thought outside the box when it built Expo Explore in Durban, South Africa, the first branded extreme sports venue that integrates with traditional retailers, and Annapolis Microsystems transformed computer programming development process, making it possible for theoreticians to quickly build and test their algorithms on real hardware used in the field. And while all of our innovators may no longer be located or headquartered in Baltimore, the spirit remains. We are naive enough to try the impossible, and we are dogged enough to never give up. Indeed, Bill Carey's fight for a world-class business school at Johns Hopkins, along with a $50 million gift to make it happen, is remarkably similar to the actions of his cousin, M. Carey Thomas, who, along with 3 other women, most notably Mary Garrett, raised $500,000 starting in 1888 on the condition that Hopkins create the Johns Hopkins Medical School such that it would be the first institution to admit women. it took them until 1893. So we went from 1888 to 1893 for these 4 pioneering women. And their simple idea was excellence in medical education and the admission of women are not incompatible. We would say a very simple idea. Bill's cousin and my wife's cousin, and we have several Careys here, M. Carey Thomas said, to exclude women from such association is speaking generally to exclude them from the delights of intellectual competition. A simple idea, to which her uncle, Francis King, so you didn't know you get into the history of Hopkins in addition to everything else, but Francis King, the then president of the board of Hopkins in this was in the midst of the battle, and of course, great Quaker tradition, said simply to M. Carey Thomas, "Thee never did a better week's work in thy life." Right? At the time, she's the dean of Bryn Mawr College and done all kinds of other things, but this simple idea essentially was the catalyst for Johns Hopkins Medical Institutions. So what do we do with all this? Global leadership from Baltimore. We have the tradition, we know what it means, and we know that it's not only possible, but essential today. Now comes the hard part. What do each of you do about it? I believe speeches like this are well-intentioned, and if the audience is lucky, perhaps not today, entertaining, but by themselves, often nothing more. We attend, we listen, we say, but so what? What does this mean? What can I take away from this? What can I do? I believe when speaking on such a theme, there's an obligation to leave the audience with something to do. Let's get on to it. First, from an individual standpoint, and then secondly, from a policy standpoint. Individually, I think here again, the answer is simple but not easy. Act upon your ideas. Good ideas know no boundaries. Good ideas travel and lead. Good ideas are explorers and pathfinders. They're at their best when they're out on the edges of the known world, pushing that envelope. Ideas transform the globe. This is not a platitude, it's a call to action. Leave here and immediately share your idea. To the most skeptical, get it torn down, rebuild it, make it stronger. Meet up with others who have incubated ideas, who created organizations, who have inspired you to action. If you've been noodling with an idea for a novel, a movie, or a song, sing it, and sing it now. Start today. The idea isn't enough, you also must act. Show your concept to the world. Risk rejection. Margaret Mead received rejections from 38 publishers before Gone with the Wind was published. Risk failure. The concept of Federal Express was given a failing grade at a very different university than Johns Hopkins, of course. We wouldn't mention it other than it is located in New Haven, Connecticut. Risk for reward. That is how success is won. That is where local and global leadership come from. The second prescription I have for you is to practice patience and incubate long-term thinking. It isn't just ideas, rather the good ideas, powerful, tested, resilient ideas. Today, the world moves very quickly, and we're inundated with data. We're expected to act immediately with little reflection or cogitation. A faster environment caters to the impatient. Resist the allure of action for its own sake. Do not become intolerant of time spent thinking and reflecting. Remember that data and information are spelled differently because they are different words. Intelligence and experience are just two sides of the triangle. You also need wisdom, something we all strive for and probably never have, but intelligence considered and tested, experience reflected upon and learned from. Now let's shift to the policy front. As a society, what can we do to create a better environment, a better incubator for global leadership from Baltimore? Our founding fathers specifically called this promoting the general welfare to ourselves and our posterity. I believe it's as simple as the greater good. Modern American politics right now is tarred with this doctrine that translates that policies that make low taxes the highest priority, even if a lack of revenue undermines basic public services. So I believe corporate leadership and corporate leaders should understand quite well that good public services are also good for business. Think of how many work hours and dollars of efficiency were lost when the bridge collapsed in Minnesota 2 years ago, and clearly the profound suffering that occurred when the levees broke during Katrina in New Orleans. Years before this great country was even founded, business leaders had already coined the term, "Pennywise is often pound foolish." But the political environment is so polarized these days that we're often reluctant to do anything but criticize, to harp on what's wrong. And I think we should think about doing what can we do to make things right. This is necessary thinking. As a region, I think we should be thinking about building a compelling competitive advantage, not just a plea based on promotion and low taxes. What is our compelling competitive advantage globally here in Baltimore and across Maryland? So I kind of thought about what are some examples that really further cement that. And in some research we did, the best ones came up as follows. One was Toyota in 2005. They're deciding on where to build the RAV4 mini SUV plant. They've had some success in the kind of southern region of the US, got lots of tax incentives, but at the end of the day, they picked Ontario. And why did they pick Ontario? The two biggest factors was the workforce in terms of quality of work and education behind it. And secondly was the healthcare system. So, at a time when our own fiercely healthcare debate is going on and no one seems to be happy about it, we might want to shift our thinking, and perhaps what unfolds could put us on an unexpected good track relative to other issues. Second example for me was Ford and the new leadership there. They didn't need a government bailout. 2 years prior to the global crisis, they had already centered on the work that said we need to have a global single platform in terms of our manufacturing paradigm. The money saved by this was staggering. People employed to make such a car, it can change a city, it can change a state, it can change a country. So kind of Ford, to me, is an excellent, excellent example. And then I think we got something right in front of us right now here in Maryland, and that is Maglev, or the Magnetic Levitation Transportation System, essentially a transportation system that could radically accelerate distance between Baltimore and Washington. People around here have been working on it for 2 decades, gone nowhere. Well, right now, President Obama has kind of earmarked big money for key transportation leadership initiatives, and we're in a position of possibly getting some of that funding, but there's still blockage around kind of thinking. I think we've got to step back and say, here's something that could truly distinguish, in terms of a real proof point, Baltimore and Maryland as a global leader, and so we ought to think about that. And finally, let's end on a real success story in education, and many of you know I've got a very close association here. But the Baltimore School for the Arts started only 30 years ago as a bold experiment thanks to the visionary leadership of Don Schaefer, Mark Joseph, and yet another Carey, Tony Carey, who served as the first board chair. It has become, in 30 years, one of the best arts institutions in the world. It's turned out hundreds of actors, musicians, painters, designers, dancers, choreographers, photographers, and teachers. Not only teaches the arts, but boasts the highest academic SAT scores across the city and one of the top across the state. It has sent graduates to Juilliard, Pratt, Tisch, Yale, UNC, etc. I'm sure at Hopkins as well. Its graduates now play for the New York Philharmonic, perform at the Lincoln Center, star in Hollywood movies, have millions selling rap albums, and teach art to thousands more. So we can do it, we have done it. So to wrap it up, like Diogenes, we are citizens of the world living in McLuhan's global village. Whatever we think of it, our leadership challenge is to do the work to make it as good as possible for as many as possible. We must act on our ideas without starry-eyed optimism nor dour pessimism. We must incubate long-term thinking by supporting the next generation of ideas. We must not let politics become polarized by dogma. We must act together for the greater good. That is what it means to be global leaders from Baltimore. Thank you. Now, for those who were looking for kind of a, an investor update on Legg Mason, feel free to ask your questions, but I thought in honor of the broader audience and the broader opportunity to speak to perhaps some broader perspective, I'd share those thoughts. But both Yash and I are happy to answer any questions you have and maybe create a bit of a dialogue here in the room. How much time we got? Got plenty of time. Questions, comments, thoughts? Michael, why don't you start us off and just give us I'll get to your question, sir, in the back, but give us a little perspective on making Harbor East happen.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you all for coming. Harbor East started out as a vision to really create a neighborhood, and it really wasn't rocket science. We just looked around Baltimore and looked at what communities used to be, and Baltimore really is, it's neighborhoods. That's what makes it. And a neighborhood is an area where you have things that you want to do, places where you can work, feel safe and secure, but it's filled with amenities. So here at Harbor East, we made a very simple decision. We would build office buildings, but we would surround it with residential, hotel, and amenities that would be around that would make it a nice place to work, but also a nice place to live. And it was very simple. We fought for density, which we have here, and fought for those amenities. And it worked over time. It took a long time. We started in 1995 with the first building, continued, that was Sylvan Learning Systems, continued building amenities, building a neighborhood. And really, it's just like an old neighborhood you would see 50 years ago. It's not much different. It has retail on the first floor, residential or office above, and it creates a nice environment to work and live. And that's really all we did. So we've been successful in getting great tenants like Legg Mason here and others that continue to grow, and that's what we'll focus on in the future. One thing I would talk about that Mark pointed on is the Maglev, and that is something that is absolutely a fantastic thing to focus on. Will Baker and I were touching on it before the meeting, and it's not only connecting Baltimore to Washington, but it's Baltimore to New York, to Philly, to Washington, to Richmond. And you travel around Europe, they have fantastic rails everywhere. We just don't have them here, and we need to focus on that. And as it was pointed out, it's been something that's been talked about for a long time, and it's so simple and logical, and people are actually standing in the way of it. So it's incredible, but it takes leadership, and not just ideas, but it takes fight. And that's really what's needed to kind of get things moving to the next level. So
great.
With that, welcome.
Thank you. There's a question in the back. Yeah.
Question and a comment. I'll make the comment first. The area about Maglev, I worked for Siemens. We, prior to the announcement of the 2008 Olympics, we took several people from the state of Maryland, Washington, D.C., and even Virginia to Siemens to see our Maglev trains. In China, Siemens is actually building 7 high-speed train systems right now. So we have to look at the rest of the world and see what they're doing in terms of technology and trying to utilize the technology to move people. Question is, state of Maryland, lived here for 35 years. How do you view the state of Maryland in terms of being open to business compared to other states and even other countries?
Yeah, I'm kind of, as you can probably see, a real believer in the glass is half full. And we just got to look at it that way. So while Maryland has been criticized on certain fronts, I think we're a lot better than that kind of superficial soundbite. I think the governor's doing a very good job battling the same thing that all of us are running, big institutions at a time of real severe economic challenge and making some tough decisions. And I think we got to appreciate that when you're making those tough decisions, they're going to, nobody's going to be happy. I mean, almost by definition. So some support on that. As I completed my tour visiting our clients and distribution partners and colleagues, I really did come back, whether it was in Beijing or Hong Kong, whether it was in London or Brussels, whether it was in Sao Paulo or Santiago. I came back, on the one hand, truly humbled by what other great cities were doing and what economies in particular were growing, particularly in Asia. And then on the other hand, kind of maybe it's that half-full mentality, kind of appreciating what we have and the distinctions that we have. And the number of times that I would meet with leaders and they would talk about, tell us about Legg Mason and you're based in Baltimore, and I would almost assume they hadn't been there. So I'd have to kind of give them the pep talk. And the fact is, not only had they been there, but they really respected it. The fellow that runs, one of our big pension sovereign clients in Latin America has studied at Hopkins on the economic side and has a keen, appreciation for the area. And so I think, and whether it's Under Armour in today's world, or T. Rowe Price in India, or Legg Mason in China, we're making lots of progress. And so I think, going specific to your question, can it be better? Yeah, all of us can be better, but we got a good thing going and let's make it even stronger. And so I think Maryland net is a plus, and our leaders. And by the way, I think all of us as leaders should appreciate, what the governor's doing. Here again, may not be happy across the board right now with what the president's doing, but we ought to be kind of supportive. I think we ought to appreciate that Mayor Dixon did a great job, I think, in leading the city. Some issues came up, and proper resolution seems to be happening, but let's appreciate that, and then let's do everything we can for soon-to-be Mayor Rawlings Blake. Yes.
So you were speaking about innovation, but it's actually in times where short-term profits that innovation happens the most and happens the best. For example, the internet boom of 2000, it was Bill Gates that actually said, yeah, we're in a bubble, but the innovation can be unmatched. It can't be matched, excuse me. So what needs to happen so that long-term thinking and sustainability becomes more attractive than short-term profits?
Well, I think really the honest answer to kind of this notion of can you innovate when you're under pressure for short-term profits, I think not only can you, but you must. The ultimate solution to short-term profits is really to kind of rev up growth. And the way to rev up growth is with real kind of, I think, products that consumers, I mean, Jeff Immelt talks about it at GE, he will go anywhere, anytime to meet with the customer to buy a GE product. And what he tells his folks is that you've got to make that product the best it can be, right? And then I'll take it from there if I have to in terms of a big turbine engine or whatever. And so I think in times like this, the necessity of generating revenues to produce profits really puts you kind of in a closer focus on the need to innovate and kind of and really deliver to your client, however you define that, something better than they can get right now. And that's not just capital investment. That's what we're talking about earlier this morning, the discussion around ideas. One of my great, kind kind of thoughts relative to that was Mike Flanagan, when he was pitching for the Orioles, said there's nothing more compelling, nothing more motivating than a mortgage payment. I don't know if anybody, I always remember that. You know, I mean, this guy, you know, and the fact is, when you got some pressure on you, you tend to do even better work. So I think that's part of it. It's got to be, I will just say, relative to Legg Mason, thanks to the leadership of some of our new team, much more than me, there's been an increased emphasis on innovation as part of our kind of turnaround story. So, yes?
Good morning. I'm a fellow ex-City banker as well.
Ah.
As a leader in the financial services industry, I'd be interested to hear your take on, we're leaving a period of excessive risk or a lot of risk, and we seem to be moving into an era where there's some socialization or government taking of the risk, whereas the return is still sitting in the private sector. As this pendulum swings back the other way, what are your thoughts on sort of what does that mean for the tenets of pure capitalism? Do we have to rethink, as a leader, do we have to rethink that personal interest, personal drive, we all want to get ahead, balancing that with the greater good versus your job is to maximize shareholder value? Right. Just some of those, your thoughts on some of those comments would be great.
I think as we come out of what truly was a harrowing experience, I mean, a year plus ago for any of us, particularly in the financial services industry, and I'm sure it was difficult across the board, but particularly in moments where markets just didn't move, trades couldn't be executed, clients' needs could not be met regardless of what you tried to do, and you really wondered if the system was going to survive first and foremost, much less certain institutions. That, too, was kind of this humbling experience for me in terms of, it took me back to my economics training at University of Pennsylvania around the essence of a public good. The essence of a public good is some service that cannot be delivered privately, that needs the kind of largesse of some sort of a public scale, and the lack of conflict around profit, whether it's short-term or long-term, to deliver that. And the financial system is, in my view, properly based on a check and balance that says we are in the business of handling other people's money. We need a bright line check and balance. Roe Price used to call it the four-wheel brakeman. I need to be surrounded by a four-wheel brakeman who makes it clear that there's certain boundaries I've got to operate in. You know, at Legg Mason, Chip always talks, and we continue to honor the tradition of no chalk. Don't go anywhere near a boundary line that you will have chalk on your shoes. It's not worth it, right? And so I think, candidly, there are certain institutions and public policies. I mean, I'm a big believer. We all got into the mess, and we all kind of candidly came out of it together, you know, worked together to come out of it. So on a go-forward basis, I think we need to be more respectful and I'm speaking now in the financial services standpoint, of the necessary check and balance of regulation and good government. At the same time, hopefully there's the other side is that the kind of service can't be delivered without kind of a private sector properly motivated, et cetera. You know, very explicitly, I think each and every institution that has recovered, that was any kind of a player during that period, benefited from the government's support, and that's a broader, that's a global, by the way, global. We never worked together as well on a global basis across, whether it was the FSA in London, you know, our regulators here, the central banks across the world. Everybody came together, stepped up in a way that got us out of the soup that we couldn't have done individually. All participants benefited. All participants thereby should show some humility and kind of recover properly. Right.
Since we're here today talking about, you know, global Baltimore, you're one of the few global firms that's still left here. I've been living here.
That's not true. That's not true. Come on, I got to challenge you on that. You got to stop that thinking right there. There are many global institutions in Baltimore. It's big, small, and medium. Anybody want to throw out some names here? Come on. Just give this fellow some ideas. Other global, Johns Hopkins. Come on, Siemens. Where's the fellow from Siemens? Yeah, Under Armour.
Headquartered.
That's fine too. We got Under Armour, Legg Mason, T-Row.
Well, I'm going on the angle of positive. Let me finish.
All right.
They have decided to make commitment to Baltimore to stay. What are some of the specific aspects of this area that make Legg Mason want to stay? And what are some of the specific actions that certain entities, be it government, business, whatever, can do to keep these institutions from leaving or even to attract them from outside? What is our comparative advantage specifically as a city versus Atlanta, Denver, Chicago, New York? What makes us stand apart that could keep corporations not only staying here but want to locate here?
Great. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I will start with my good friend Will Baker, because I think one of our principal competitive advantages is the Chesapeake Bay. So Will, why don't you kind of give us a little update? Come on. You all know Will heads the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
What was the question again? Now look, I'll be very brief. This is not to talk about Chesapeake Bay, but there is nothing like it in the world. We have the best science anywhere in the world. We have all the technology. We know exactly what needs to be done to put it back as the world-class producer of seafood, of recreation, of good health, of great benefits to the region. We just need to put the plans in place. And I can tell you, we are getting, and I say we as a very broad community of political and community and civic leaders, we're getting very close to having the political will to do it. Very close. And the good news is the Bay is starting to respond. You won't read this in the newspaper, but 4 or 5 key metrics, underwater grasses, oysters, crabs, even the dissolved oxygen, they're all going in the right direction, albeit not anywhere near where we need them to be, but they've started to turn the corner. So we've got momentum, we can do it, and we can make this really, once again, the Chesapeake Bay as the icon for the land of pleasant living. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
very nice.
So kind of in an era where environment is important, I would say kind of environment, living, lifestyle, et cetera. The second would be really a very underappreciated that as an educated workforce, and as a kind of, if you connect, as we properly should, Baltimore with Washington, I think, who's got the statistic? We rank among the highest, if not the highest, per capita relative to kind of certain Yash, do you have that? Yeah. Give me something more specific, man. You got the, yeah, there we go.
I'm Tom Sadowsky, Economic Alliance Greater Baltimore.
Yeah.
We have the highest percentage of educated professionals in the country. We have the greatest diversity of industry. When you combine that with value, quality of living, our market is extremely tough to beat when you're looking at Virginia, even if you're looking at Virginia, D.C., Philadelphia, or any other market in this country. We have significant decisions that have been made over the last couple of years. I myself testified, on behalf of bringing a lot of the military missions that are coming here, new headquarters coming to this region because of our quality of living, the support of the financial institutions that are here, the educational institutions that are here. I think it goes, Mark, back to your comment where we really have to appreciate what it is that we have. And I would encourage the gentleman that asked the question, it's a good question, and it's one that we have to continually ask ourselves. GreaterBaltimore.org, a lot of the stats, a lot of superlatives there, but we are very appreciative. Where else in a market can you have a project such as this, a neighborhood, as Michael Beatty had termed it, in a very downtrodden economy, and yet we're at a very high lease rate in this building, and there are things happening in other places in the Central Business District where money's being reinvested in communities. So it's a good question. It's one that always has to be asked, but also we do have to appreciate what is being done and the stats that are factual. So.
Great, thanks, Tom. And having said that, right, this isn't a booster speech. There is a real tough competitive environment out there for regions, as there is for businesses, as there is for education institutions, business schools, hospitals, et cetera. And so this brings me back to the substance of really do the work to construct a compelling competitive advantage. And, you know, we have real challenges. You know, our public education system, certainly in the city, has got some real challenges. But that, too, progress is being made, but we got to look, you know, unvarnished at what those challenges are and work through them. And this comes back to, you know, I don't think it's about having better promotion and tax incentives. It's about building the substance of your competitive advantage, whether that's a company, an institution, or a region. So, how about one more? I think time is, there we go. Yes, sir.
The Carey School's motto is where business is taught with humanity in mind. How can corporations, particularly financial services, embrace that motto on a global scale to, I guess, help humanity as well as bring value back to their shareholders?
Yeah, and I think that mission is just a wonderful mission. Business, humanity are not incompatible concepts, in the same way that excellence in medical education and admission of women are not incompatible concepts, right? The fact is you can do both, as we have proven with the Johns Hopkins medical institutions. And in my mind, what it means, and I think there's an inflection point. I think there's an inflection point that says, because of what we've been through, the era of the CEO of a particularly, let's say, a publicly traded company is singularly focused on shareholder return, narrowly defined as kind of profits, return off of the stock price, et cetera. I think that is moving away from that narrow definition into a broader one. Because I would argue the ones who were most singularly focused on that led institutions that ultimately got into the biggest trouble. So that kind of narrow focus really ultimately was destructive of shareholder value, not producing it. And so I think this is very much in sync with what's going on. But you've got to do it with a sense of mettle. You've got to do your humanity with a sense of bottom line. You know, it's as simple as faith and works, the biblical combination, right? You have to have faith, however you define it, and you have to deliver works. And in today's world, delivering works is a lot tougher than probably it's ever been. Hence the importance of that anchor of faith. And I think that's really what the Carey Business School mission is all about.